Greetings, my friends. Let's get started. So we got today is called, God, what did I title this? One second. Exploitation or perfection of religion. So we're going to get one chapter where the main subject is how religion is exploited. And then the chapter after that is really how sincere religion would be. And it's not like these are chapters about it, but that's what the story of Prthu is going to focus on at this time. That's like the background or the moral of the story of Prthu's story at this point. So with Prthu, we heard so far about how he was created as a clone from Vena, along with Archie, his companion. Then we heard about his primary deed, the deed that he's most famous for, which was ending a famine. Yeah, he ended a famine. And so he actually interacted directly with the earth goddess for that. And she explained to him how to end the famine, and then they did that. Then the next story after that comes to this, okay? Comes to this part of the story. So we can just start. Let me just put this on the same page. Okay. So this is chapter 19, and I'm calling it Indra's Thievery. On the eastern course of River Saraswati is Manu's sacred field, Brahmavarta. So in other words, the eastern course of the Saraswati goes through a place where Manu used to perform ceremonies, and they call it Brahmavarta. Probably means that's where Lord Brahma used to go. There, at that place, Prthu began performing 100 horse rituals. Thank you, Bardo. So this is a common thing in yoga. There's yama, niyam, asana, pranayam. Asana is not just about the way you sit, but it's about the place where you sit. It's to select in a proper place is really important for how your efforts will work out. So Prthu selected to asana in a sacred place. It's the easiest way to succeed. So he picked Manu's Brahmavarta and he did his ceremonies there. So he decided to do 100 horse ceremonies. What's a horse ceremony? It's basically, as far as I understand it, which is pretty well since I've spent a couple of years thinking about it. It's a fertilization ceremony. It ensures the fertility of the king and the queen, because it's quite important for the king and queen to produce heirs in abundance, actually. So the king and queen, the king will usually right away perform a horse ceremony. He is going to do 100 of them. Why? Just like if you're going to throw a party, you throw a big one. So he's going to do 100. There's nobody else in history. Now, Vedic ceremonies are not like we do sometimes with my friend Wayland. We just dig a hole somewhere and put some twigs in it, light them on fire, and call it a Vedic ceremony. It's not really a Vedic ceremony. Vedic ceremonies are extremely elaborate and require close to like the equivalent of millions of dollars of resources. So to be able to do 100 of them is extremely rare. No one else in the whole history of the world has been able to do 100 horse ceremonies in succession, except Indra, the king of heaven. So that's one of Indra's remarkable trademarks. So he's not going to like the idea that a king on earth is going to be just as affluent as he is. So the only person who had successfully done this was Indra. And when he heard what Prthu was doing, he could not tolerate the possibility that someone else might excel him. So, side note, the pollen hay fever season is at the peak this week. So that's why I'm sniffling and all that stuff. My eyes are itchy. It's ridiculous. So apologies for all the sniffling sounds that you're going to be hearing. When Indra turned his glance to observe Prthu's ceremonies, he indeed saw many signs that the king was already surpassing his glory. Most importantly, Prthu's ceremonies were personally attended by Hari, the ultimate aim of all rituals, all attractive supreme master, soul of everyone, source of all power, and ultimate leader of all communities. Brahma and fearless Shiva also attended, as did the protectors of the world and all their followers. All of them created a grand kirtan led by scholars, in which the singers and dancers of heaven performed. This company included all of Brahma's retinue, the celestial masters and scientists, all Shiva's consorts, demons, anti-gods, and many other mysterious creatures, and Hari's most exalted associates like Sunanda and Nanda. Scholars like Kapila, Narada, and Dattatreya also attended, as did powerful yogis like Sanaka and many blessed beings enwrapped in the joy of Hari's service. So Prthu doesn't even have to do 100 ceremonies to already be besting Indra. And that is, yeah, I know, I've been doing that, Devana, for like a year. Japanese pollen is the worst in the world. The cedar pollen is just incredibly potent. But yeah, I'm trying that, thank you. I just heard that the Japanese government discovered that B7 has a positive effect on this particular allergy to the Japanese cedar. So I might try that. Anyway, so Indra finds out that Prthu, this earthly king, is going to do 100 horse ceremonies. He gets a little bit irritated with that. He checks it out. And he sees, wait, he's already besting me. He's already making me look bad. Why? Because when I did my 100 ceremonies, I didn't literally have, I had the invoked presence of the gods, of course, because that's how you do the ceremony. But I didn't literally have them as attendees of the ceremony. He has Vishnu, Brahma, and Shiva attending his ceremony. And they brought all of their pals with them too, who are all these fantastic beings. And besides the three gods, he's got all these sages like Kapila, Narada, etc., and all these yogis like Sanaka. He's already more glorious than me. Indra doesn't like that. So he's gonna decide he needs to do something about that. Oh, this is also interesting. He realized that Prthu would easily get all the opulence that he needed to perform these rituals more extravagantly than they had ever been performed before. So one of his things was, let me just check this out, because probably this guy's not going to be able to do it. Probably I don't need to worry that this guy is also doing 100 ceremonies, because he'll barely do them and they'll be less grandiose. They'll be minimalistic, and it won't make mine look any less. It will make mine look better, actually. Let me just check and see. Then he checks to see what's going on, and he sees these more glorious guests, and he's going to be able to do it even more opulently than Indra could do it. Why? Because the earth goddess, with her famous milk that grants all wishes, attended Prthu. From the previous story, they made a very close relationship where she becomes his daughter. So she's there as functioning as his daughter. So the earth itself is going to, the earth is the source of all wealth. That's why in the zodiac, the earth element is associated to wealth. Her abundant milk seeped into the ground, making the trees blossom with huge fruits and drip with honey-sweet saps. So you need all that stuff for the ceremonies. It overflowed into the river, so then it supercharges the rivers, cause the earth to become very nourished and fertile. But the earth supercharges the rivers The earth goddess supercharges the rivers. So the abundant milk overflowed into the river, which seemed to flow with milks, creams, and yogurts. Those are all the things you need for the ceremony. You can get them right out of the river. The milk river brought extreme opulence to the lands that it irrigated as it flowed to the ocean. The kings and citizens who lived along this flow came to the ceremonies bearing incredible gifts, heaps of jewels, and mountains of all sorts of food. So all the things that are required that make this ceremony like the equivalent of what we would say millions of dollars. All of those things are readily available in excess. Jealous of the king's unsurpassed wealth and devotion to Hari, powerfully blessed Indra decided to interfere. So this is also an illustration of a moral point. Indra has great opulence because of his power, but Prthu has great opulence because of having done things properly. There's two ways to get wealthy. One way is the way that we all think that you get wealthy, which is you go out there, you get ahead. The other way is to do things right, to treat everybody right, to fulfill your responsibilities, because then everybody owes you favors and they actually feel happy and natural to give you, they want to pay you back, they want to do things for you. And so that's the case with Prthu. The earth goddess is volunteering blessings. Hari is coming more than he has to. Shiva, they're not just coming as required by the ceremony. So it's another illustration of a point that you get more opulence through dharma than you do through karma. As Vena's son began the final horse sacrifice for the master of sacrifice, Indra enviously stole the horse, unseen by anyone. So Indra's like, no, this is not going to happen. I'm going to interfere with this. I'm going to take away the ceremonial horse. Only powerful Atri could see Indra fleeing into the sky, armored in the disguise of a spiritualist, and thus marring a religious image with an immoral deed. Atri showed Prthu's son what was going on and said, "Kill him." Prthu's heroic son became furious and chased Indra, commanding, "Halt! Stand and fight!" But when he got close, he was baffled by Indra's religious disguise. His hair was knotted in dreadlocks, and ash was all over his skin. Out of sentiment towards the appearance of religiosity, Prthu's son could not loose his arrows. Atri shouted, "Kill him! He may be the great king of heaven, but he is now the most debased of all the wise gods, for he has disrupted a sacrificial ceremony." The text itself is going to say more about this, but let me just explain the point. Indra utilizes religion to do something malicious. So he takes the appearance of a yogi to steal somebody's property. And then when the person comes to punish him, they hesitate because all of a sudden they feel like they're punishing a person who shouldn't be punished. And in that hesitation, that gives Indra an advantage and an ability to escape. So there's more going to be said about this, but I just want to call your attention to that. Indra fled, and Prthu's son again furiously chased him, like Jatayu chasing Ravana. To escape, Indra had to disappear. Indra has this power that he can vanish. So he had to use the vanish power, but in order to vanish, he had to give up his disguised form and lose the horse. He couldn't take the horse with him because he had to vanish. So, Indra escaped, but they got the horse back. Seeing Prithu's heroic son return to his father with the animal, Atri and the foremost sages granted him the name Vijitasva, horse winner. With a powerful golden chain, the priests tied the horse to a post near the pile of firewood, but Indra cast the entire arena into pitch darkness and somehow stole the horse again. Again, Atri alone could see what was happening, and showed Vijitasva that Indra was fleeing into the sky with the horse. Again, Vijitasva chased Indra, and again, when he got close, he was baffled by Indra's disguise and could not kill the thief. This time, Indra had assumed the form of a mystic carrying a skull and staff. So he took a different religious image, a different type of yogi. Again, Atri encouraged Vijitasva to kill the thief, and again, when Vijitasva set his arrow upon the bowstring, Indra disappeared, forced to give up his disguise and abandon the horse. Once again, the hero returned to his father with the recovered horse. Unfortunately, humans thought Indra was very clever and were impressed by the efficacy of his strategy to use religious symbols as a shield for selfish deeds. Since then, many fools also disguised themselves with spiritual trappings to trick the masses into forgiving or permitting their shameful deeds. The forms Indra adopted in his scheme to steal the horse are therefore considered symbols or khanda of evil, and people who adopt these forms for their shameful reasons are considered exploiters of symbols, pakhanda or pashanda. Alf, I was just thinking about you. Yeah, I know I was thinking about you because the first time we went over this, you were really into it. Good to see you, Alf. So this is an important point. Humans were like, Indra's pretty smart, isn't he? Look, that is a good way to get things done. So a saintly person should never be punished. Why would you punish a saintly person? They would never do anything wrong. If they seem to be doing something wrong, it must be you that doesn't understand how it's not wrong because they're a saintly person. Yeah, now that is the truth. But it doesn't stop a criminal from saying, "Hi, I'm a saintly person," and then performing crime. And it doesn't mean that you or I will have the perception. Only Atri had the perception to see Indra for what he really was. So most people won't be able to say, that's just a disguise. I could just see that that's just a disguise. You're not really a great guru. You're just collecting money and getting tax exemption. You're actually just a lazy bastard who's making people take care of you all day long, give you all their money, sacrifice their life for you, cook all your food, wash all your clothes, do everything you say, and you're giving them nothing in return. You're just lazy, criminal. But you look like a sannyasi. You look like a yogi. Therefore, nobody is going to get mad at you. So human beings thought, that's smart. That is a smart thing to do. Indra is so smart. And then since then, it's become a practice among human beings. All right. And that's actually the etymology of the word pashanda. Don't got time for this. Just a second. Okay. That is, what was I saying? That's the etymology of the word pashanda or pashandi. Hey, Graziella. Which, I mean, means nothing to you if you don't care, like if you don't I've never heard the word Pashanda before, but if you did, that's what Pashanda really means. Is it's people generally just use it as a term to mean bad guy or atheist, but actually the real meaning of the word is exploiter of the symbolism. All right, going on. This would be the origin of religious hypocrisy among humans and the beginning of religion's decline into pseudo-religion. Realizing this, the blessed and renowned Prthu became very angry and took up his bow and arrows against Indra. So Prthu gets, now it's not just his son, because the guy, when you're performing a ceremony, you're not supposed to do much. You're not supposed to do anything, especially you're not supposed to get angry. That's why Atri kept telling Indra's son, Prthu's son, not Prthu himself. But now when Prthu sees what's going on, he can't take it anymore. So he just says, Indra is a real jerk. He spoiled the whole human society, which I'm the protector of. I'm gonna punish that guy. So he picks up his bow and arrows. Seeing him rise in a terrible rage, the priest declared, "O king of broad intellect, if you injure any creature during the ceremony, it will be ruined." That's one of the things. The ceremony must have ahimsa, or non-violence. So if the performer of the ceremony shouldn't even get angry, if it gets angry, it's very likely that the ceremony will become ineffective. What to speak if he insults anybody, or what to speak if he physically injures somebody, he or she. So Prthu just glanced furiously at the sky towards Indra. "We will stop him," the priest said, "and we will do it in a sacrificial manner. We will use mantra to summon that Lord of Storms who wants to destroy your success. They will invoke him." These mantras, it's a little confusing, right? These incantations will invoke him instantly and irresistibly. Just a second. He is already powerless because he opposes you, and we are all powerful because we serve you. Once he is summoned, we will make him the final horse and give him to the sacrificial fire. That's tough. I like these guys. These guys are hard. So they're like, "Yo, sit down. We're going to take care of this. You're not supposed to get your hands dirty, so we will. And this guy's trying to steal our horse. We're going to make him the horse. And we're going to stick him in the fire. And we have mantras to summon him because he's a god. He can be summoned. So boom, no problem. Just sit down and relax." Not waiting for Prthu to reply, the furious priests prepared to incant the mantras, taking butter oil ladles in their hands. But self-born Brahma interrupted, ordering them to stop. This is super interesting now. Brahma declares, "You must not try to kill Indra. You will fail. For he is an essential part of the sacrifices manifest by the all-attractive. Should sacrifice be employed to destroy sacrifice? If you did kill him, what would happen to all the gods for whom he is the essential king?" There was silence, and Brahma continued, "O priests, by disrupting the king's ceremony, religious ceremony, in the guise of a religious person, Indra has opened the door to terrible religious hypocrisy and exploitation. Now, just see the first result. You want to kill him by a religious ceremony." That is the part that blew my mind. Wow. That Indra's thing had an effect right immediately in how the priests wanted to deal with Indra. Indra was using a religious function to get some kind of selfish thing out of it. And then the priest said, "Oh, we can do the same thing. We'll use these mantras to summon the gods to kill this god." And Brahma says, "Hey, hello, look at this mirror. You look exactly like Indra. You're doing the exact same thing now. The guy who you think is bad has now become you." The priest put down the ladles in shock. Brahma turned to Prthu and said, "Broad-minded king, your fame is already spread everywhere. So what if you have performed 90... Sorry, I can't even read this right and I wrote it. So what if you have performed 99 rituals? Let me do this to help the future readers who are not me. Just put this in italic. So what if you have performed 99 rituals instead of 100? I love Brahma. He's so practical. So what? You perform 99 horse ceremonies, not 100. What's the big deal? What's the real difference? You know that religion is actually meant for spiritual liberation, so why should you even be so intent on finishing your 100th mundane religious sacrifice? What will you gain, really, if you succeed?" And then Prithu's anger disappeared. So Brahma is so cool. He just says to the priest, "Chill out. You just became just as bad as Brahma. You just became just as bad as Indra. So stop." And Prthu, just stop. Just let it go. You wanted to do 100 ceremonies. All you got to do was 99. Boo-hoo, what's the big deal? They're not even... Who even cares about the ceremony in the first place? It's just some kind of something you do so that there's fertility. It's not like a terribly spiritually important thing. So who cares? Whoop-de-doo, you didn't get to be greater than Indra. Indra cares a lot about that. Do you? That's his point. Indra is a king just like you, Brahma continued. And both of you are parts of he who is glorified in topmost poetry. So why be angry at him? Why should anyone be angry at either of you? I wish good fortune to both of you. So his first point is, look, you're a king, so you can understand. He's a king. Kings wear crowns. Kings, walk around with a lot of gold chains. Kings live in palaces. Kings show their muscles. Why? Because they're kings. They need to be intimidating. Kings don't like other kings to be more powerful than they are. Duh, you can understand that. You're a king. Why be upset with Indra about this? And then the other thing that he says is, you're a avatar of Vishnu. He's an avatar of Vishnu. So why should you get upset at each other? You're both performing some function which is important for the course of history. It's actually essential to introduce religious hypocrisy. Otherwise, you can't get the progress of decline, which is a part of what has to happen as a part of the cycles of fate. As Prthu looked at the half-completed final sacrifice, Brahma encouraged, "Your soul is very soft and kind, O Emperor. Don't worry yourself by dwelling on this last sacrifice. What is done is done. The mind of one who dwells on what destiny seems to steal is lost in blinding darkness of anger." That is a good quote. The mind of one who dwells on what destiny seems to steal is lost in the blinding darkness of anger. Damn. The mind of one who dwells on what destiny seems to steal is lost. If destiny takes something, just let it go. If your mind remains fixed on it, then it's going to go with it. Give up this ceremony. Of all the gods, Indra is the most tenacious and impossible to thwart. He has already created such a mess by using religious symbols to accomplish your religious aims. Seeing how Indra ruined your ceremony by stealing the horse, everyone is now tempted to exploit religious symbols for their own interests. You've come into this world to help bring people into moral harmony. After Vena practically destroyed morality, you arose from a part of his body as a manifestation of Vishnu's expansion. Fulfill your mission, which is the mission shared by all of us who help create the world. Don't think about destroying Indra. Don't destroy. You're not a destroyer, you're a creator. Think about destroying the religious hypocrisy that he has invited by so wantonly exploiting religious symbolism. The king accepted the guidance of the world's guru, Brahma, and compassionately forgave Indra. He then indicated the end of his ceremonies by taking the ceremonial bath. So Prthu is super cool. Also, he's just like, all right, my head is cool. I'm taking the bath. That's how you end the ceremony, is you take a certain bath, ceremonial bath at the end. After this, the divine benedictors gladly granted him... Oops. After this, the divine benedictors gladly granted him benedictions, and he respectfully gave donations to the scholars. They felt honored, and they, whose wishes always come true, offered the emperor their best wishes. He then respectively gave charity and honor to everyone who had attended the ceremony, from the ancestrals, gods, and original sages, down to the common human. Boom. That's the end of Prthu's 99.9 horse ceremonies. Got 99 problems and a horse ain't one. Alright, now I also did chapter 20. So this is how Vishnu is going to react to all of this. So far we had knowledge bombs dropped by Brahma, but then we're going to get some words from Vishnu. So chapter 20, Vishnu enlightens Prthu. The all-attractive Vishnu, powerful and carefree master and true objective of all sacrifice, was pleased by Prthu's ceremonies and appeared before the emperor along with powerful Indra. So Vishnu says, Indra, come here. And then he kind of like puts his arm around Indra and takes him over to Prthu. You need to you need to do something cool. Now you need to show that you're cool too. So Vishnu takes Indra over to Prthu. Glancing towards Indra, Vishnu said, "Here is the one who disrupted your 100th ceremony. He seeks your forgiveness, so I think he deserves it." Indra is actually so humiliated in this scene, he doesn't even have the guts or the manliness to speak for himself. Vishnu speaks for him. Should I really forgive his immoral deeds? Prthu seemed to wonder, so Vishnu encouraged him not to be angry. O God of humanity, he said, the best humans, good people with good intellect, don't hold on to malice towards anyone. Malice is something that you need to be able to punish something that's wrong, but you don't hold on to it after the punishment. If the punishment is done or if the punishment is no longer required, then malice shouldn't be something which remains. It's just a part of the chain of events that enables the punishment. So don't hold on to malice towards anyone. Which quote, Pash? He seeks your forgiveness, so I think he deserves it. How is it possible? How can they feel no malice towards those who cause them harm? Vishnu explained, they forgive because they forgive because they know the difference between their true self and its body. People who don't understand the difference between the self and its body, oh, my nose is so itchy, work very hard and long to secure what their bodies desire, but in the end wind up with no profit except their sweat. Such frustrated and irritable people are very easily moved to malice. So how can you give up your malice towards somebody? You have to know the difference between the real you and the temporary you. If you don't know the real difference between the real you and the temporary you, then the situations of the temporary you will be very, very frustrating to you. And malice will not leave you. Irritation, etc. will not leave you. If the body is not exactly the self, what is it? Prthu would ask. The wise know, Vishnu explains, that the body is the tangible result of our self-ignorant desires. Wow. The body is the tangible result of our self-ignorant desires. This is why the wise are not terribly attached to the pleasures that might be acquired through it. This in turn is why they are not disturbed and moved to malice if someone or something presents a disruption or obstacle to such pleasures. They are wisely not excessively defensive of their household, assets, or lineage. If the body is not the true source of identity, Prthu would ask, what is? The true source of identity, Vishnu explains, is a singular, pure, self-luminous entity. It is not limited by any characteristic or quality, but... Yeah, this is the wrong grammar. Shelters. And you could put another it. I mean, sometimes I like to be high-class writing, but sometimes it's simpler to just write something that's easier to read. So what he says is the true source of identity, the true source of the self, is a singular, pure, self-luminous entity. Whoa. It's not a body that has many different shapes or many different conditions. It is not limited by any characteristic or quality. So it doesn't have quality or characteristic, but it is not limited by qualities or characteristic, but it is the shelter or the fundament or the foundation upon which all characteristics and qualities exist. And this is a point that baffles most spiritualists, that spirit or God or divinity must be formless because it can't be limited by the forms. So it's not limited by forms, but it's the foundation upon which forms exist. That's the truth. So it's not that self has no specificity or identity to it, or it's not that God has no specificity or identity, and it's just a formless energy, whatever that means. It's that the energy, the form and specificity doesn't define the being, but the being upholds and defines the form and specificity. True source of identity is a singular, pure, self-luminous entity, not limited by any characteristic or quality, but I see why. The true source of I'm talking about my grammar now. The true source of identity is a singular, pure, self-luminous entity. It is not limited by any characteristic or quality, but it's sheltered. There we go. There you go. Good work, Vic. It is not limited by any characteristic or quality, but it shelters distinct characteristics and qualities. Instead of shelters... Yeah. But it is the foundation for all distinct characteristics and qualities. It spreads everywhere, and its all-witnessing sentience cannot be impeded. Beyond the false self, it is the supreme source of the self. So it's not that these people don't have a sense of self. They have a sense of self, but it's not dependent upon their body. Ah, Mr. Elf. Yes, that's a great quote, Bash. Does the false self have any relation to the true self, the Emperor would want to know? And does the limited self have some relation to the supreme self? Yes, Vishnu affirmed. The wise know themselves to be situated within that supreme self. The unwise determine their identity by looking towards the qualities of their external bodies, but the wise determine their identity by looking inwards towards the supreme self, who is the ultimate root of all individuals. Those who look towards me as the eternal essence of their identity develop sincere interest and great adoration for me. This gradually fills their hearts with satisfaction and peace, which makes them completely lose interest in external attractions. Their broadened minds see equal value in everything, which brings them into unity with the completely placid state of spiritual oneness. I wonder if Samurai Mama is here and okay. Now, the reason why I thought of Samurai is because this sounds exactly like Bhagavad Gita. Why do they see everything as being of equal value, the Emperor would ask. They attain this beautiful vision, Vishnu explained, because they know the soul to be the origin of everything in this world. We went over this. This is Bhagavad Gita also. The soul is the origin of everything in the world, every object, every perception, and every action. Thus, everything seems equally valuable, for everything is based on their soul. So that's what we were talking about with lollipops and pleasure and happiness. We talked about this in the Bhagavad Gita class that we're doing with Samurai. The lollipop does not have a happiness in it. It just causes the mind to configure itself in such a way that it lets some of the happiness of the soul be experienced. The soul is the thing which has the happiness in it, because that's where your happiness is in your experience. It's in the consciousness. It's not in the objects. But the reason why it seems like it's in the objects is because when the objects are not there, then the consciousness doesn't experience it. But if you It's so you're dependent upon the external objects to make your mind access the happiness which is in the consciousness. But if you realize that the happiness is in the consciousness, you might be inspired to take control of your mind and be able to move it around the same way the objects do without needing the objects. So when you achieve that, you don't care that much if you have a lollipop or a broccoli or a mushroom. It doesn't matter. So that's why they see everything as equally valuable. And they also realize that these things are extrinsic projections from the soul, which can only glance at them from afar. What? Yet they also realize that these things are extrinsic projections from the soul, who can only glance at them from afar. Therefore, everything seems equally worthless. Interesting. Thank you, Adam. Thank you for the comment, Melissa. So now Vishnu recaps his message. The placid state of spiritual oneness arises when you become indifferent to good and bad. You will become indifferent to good and bad when you are illuminated by the knowledge that everything good and bad is nothing but your soul, projecting consciousness into extrinsic identities, activities, and objects that flow incessantly from the fascinating qualities of external nature. That's dense. Want to read it one more time? The placid state of spiritual oneness arises when you become indifferent to good and bad. Oneness or sameness or equanimity is not to go up and down, good and bad. How do you become indifferent to good and bad? When you are illuminated by the knowledge that everything good and bad is nothing but your soul. It's just your experience. This feels bad because you feel it. This feels good because you feel it. It's all just the feeling within the soul. It's not the thing that's good or bad. It's the feeling that you're having. Everything good or bad is nothing but your soul projecting its consciousness into the extrinsic situation. If I was in Ukraine right now, I would think that it was really, 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 really bad. I'm not in Ukraine right now. I don't know anybody in Ukraine. I think it's bad. And then I live the rest of my day. Because my consciousness is not as projected into these situations that are going on right now in the Ukraine. Because I'm not there. What's going on in the Ukraine is equally bad, whether I'm there or you're there or somebody else is there. But to the people that's there, it's really, really bad. And to the people that are not there, let's face it, as no matter how humanitarian you want to say that you are, it's kind of bad. But hey, let's have breakfast. So this is because the goodness and the badness in life is not a result of the stuff that's happening in your life. It's a result of how much you put yourself into the stuff that's happening in your life. So that's what they realize. Good and bad is actually just the soul projecting itself into external conditions. And those external conditions, activities, objects, etc., flow incessantly from the fascinating qualities of external nature. They constantly are changing. So they don't even care that much that it's bad. It's going to change. Things will happen that make it change. I may be a part of the things which happen. That doesn't mean I shouldn't pick up my weapon and defend my country. That's part of what happens to make it change. But it will change. And then when it's good, also, it will change. So they don't get that carried away by the goodness and the badness of the things that are happening in the external stuff. So that's Vishnu's recap of his message. The placid state of spiritual oneness arises when you become... Why is he talking about this at all? He's telling Prthu, forgive Indra. And Prthu is asking, how do you forgive somebody that you're angry at? And Vishnu says, there's no need to be angry. Even if something bad happens, anger is just a tool to change it. But if the change has occurred, as you see, it has occurred, he's here apologizing. Then there's no need to keep the anger. And how do you get rid of the anger when you don't need it anymore? By being detached from the situation. How do you be detached from the situation? By knowing what the situation is. It's just an external thing that constantly changes. The placid state of spiritual oneness arises when you become indifferent to good and bad. You become indifferent to good and bad when you are illuminated by the knowledge that everything good and bad is nothing but your soul, projecting consciousness into extrinsic identities, activities, and objects that flow incessantly from the fascinating qualities of external nature. You will become illuminated by this knowledge when you bind your heart to me as the very root of your identity. The emperor found a surge of inspiration to strive for this. Vishnu cautioned him. Thank you, Marie. Go. The emperor felt a surge of inspiration to strive for this. Vishnu cautioned him that it need not involve giving up his important duties as a protector of others. O hero, he said, you should see everything and everyone as a reflection of me and serve and protect them all. Your senses and mind should experience the same value in pleasant and unpleasant things and people, regardless of whether they seem to be superior, average, or inferior. What will become of a king who dedicates himself to protecting the people, Prthu might wonder. One who truly protects his subjects, Vishnu replied, receives a sixth of the credit of their good deeds, but one who merely taxes without truly caring for his subjects receives the discredit for all their foul deeds. To truly protect and not exploit his subjects, a leader follows the moral principles established by great philosophers and helps his followers do the same. The world quickly comes to adore such a person, and all perfections place themselves within his grasp. So Adam, it's all about the identity. The dichotomy is that a wise person forms their identity based inward, and a unwise person or an unaware person forms their identity based outward. So the unwise person forms the identity based on the situations in their external environment, including their hair, their eye, their skins, feelings. The wise person, inward doesn't just mean inward from your body, it means inward from your experience. So outward is also feelings. Inward is to the consciousness itself, to the experiencer itself. So the wise directs their identity is based inward towards the experiencer, which leads them to base their identity upon Vishnu, the personification of consciousness itself. And that makes them feel like a person in a movie theater rather than the actor on the screen, as regards the affairs of external life. All right. Prthu looked at Vishnu with eyes that overflowed with grateful love. Vishnu looked back at him with the same vivid affection. O Indra of mankind, Vishnu said, I am difficult to captivate by sacrifices. And I am not easily attained by self-sacrifice either. And I am merely neutral towards those whose consciousness is neutral towards everything. But I am completely captivated by people who protect others in this manner, as you do so well. Your wondrously affectionate character has captivated my heart, so ask a benediction from me, anything you like, please. So it's very interesting. Again, this is very, very dense. He's given a gradation of good spirituality. He starts off by saying sacrifices, ceremonies. So that's the lowest level. So he says people that perform ceremonies, it's very rare for them to be interesting to me. So that's the first thing that he says. Then the other thing is not the external sacrifice, but the internal sacrifice. So self-sacrifice. So like the people who do voluntary discipline to gain knowledge and better understanding. It's more likely that that would attract Vishnu's attention, but it's also not easy, he says. I'm not easily attained by self-sacrifice either. Then the third level is people who realize the self as pure consciousness. And so they become completely indifferent towards the goods and bads of the world. So they become completely neutral. And Vishnu says, well, when people become completely neutral, I become completely neutral towards them. So he says, I'm merely neutral towards those whose consciousness is neutral. But I am completely captivated by people who are affectionate. I feel affection for people who are affectionate. So the key to attracting Vishnu is to be loving. Because love attracts love. So he says, because you're very loving to people, selflessly loving to people, and you take care of people, you protect people, then I will protect you, and I love you, and I want to take care of you in that way. So ask something from me. Jonathan, yes. So it's not exact. The horse isn't killed. It's not a sacrifice. It's a ceremony. It's actually quite astonishing what goes on with this horse. You should look it up if you want to have a real eye-opening experience. The conqueror of the world, Prthu, gratefully bowed his head to receive the orders of the world's all-powerful teacher, Hari. Amazed by the affection shared between Prthu and Hari, Indra's standing here the whole time. Indra's standing here the whole time just watching, hearing this thing, but he's like totally sidelined. So this is also, Vishnu has this beautiful way of doing things like this. Like, Indra is actually getting humiliated and punished right now. But Vishnu is doing it in such a soft and sweet way. Just by taking him here to apologize to Prthu and then showing so much attention and affection to Prthu and ignoring Indra. So because of this, Indra felt ashamed of what he had done, and so he bowed to touch the emperor's feet in apology. But Prthu had completely abandoned all his anger and embraced Indra, addressing him as the performer of 100 sacrifices. Prthu then turned his attention to worshipping the all-attractive soul of all, with ever-increasing devotion dedicated to Hari's lotus feet. Finally, Vishnu turned to depart, petrified by the imminent departure of his beloved Hari. Finally, Vishnu turned to depart. Boom. Let's put this as another paragraph. Finally is kind of a weird English word. Makes it seem like a desirable thing. Eventually, Vishnu turned to depart. Petrified by the imminent departure of his beloved Hari, the emperor could not say a word. He stood completely still with tightly folded hands and tears pouring from his eyes as he engulfed his inner heart in Hari. Alpha, I hope you're still here. This is your part. This is the part that you liked. Seeing this with his lotus petal eyes, Hari could not bear to leave. His affection for his dear devotee detained him. Hearing no sound of departure, Prthu opened his eyes to see what was going on, but could not see anything through all his tears. Wiping away the tears, an incessantly delightful vision came into focus. The Supreme Person still stood before him. Vishnu had suddenly ceased his ascent into the heavens, and his feet now touched the earth. Dizzy with emotion by seeing Prithu's affection, he stumbled slightly as he landed, and steadied himself by placing his hand on Garuda, who had extended his shoulder to catch him. Composing himself as far as he could, the emperor began to speak. "What benediction should I ask from you?" he said. "What would a wise person ask from a master who can fulfill any wish?" Vishnu might suggest that he imagined the most wonderful thing in the world and asked for it. So Prthu explained, "I won't ask for anything that exists in this world, for all such things are just transformations of the same material that the denizens of hell experience." Vishnu might suggest that he asked for something beyond experience. So Prthu said, "You are the master of enlightenment, so maybe I should ask you to allow me to merge completely into consciousness itself, so that I never again experience anything except consciousness itself. But no, I do not want even that, my dear. I would not want to exist in a state in which I could not drink the experience of your lotus feet. Vishnu in shyness would run out of suggestions, so Prthu would speak his mind in all honesty. This is it. Prthu says, the benediction I ask from you is this. Give me infinite senses to experience you. This is the most intelligent thing. Why ask for infinite experience of a non-specific thing? Ask for infinite experience of the experiences that are available. We don't want to have limited experience of limited things like as we have now. But the solution is not to have unspecified infinite experience. It's to have what Prthu is asking for. The benediction I ask from you is this. Give me infinite senses to experience you. Give me unlimited ears to hear what comes from the heart through the mouth of the greatest souls. The breeze of their breath carries the pollen of their love for you, O Mother Pollen, of their love for you from the lotus of your feet, which they embrace in their hearts. It becomes honey as it passes through their vocal cords. The ear drinks this honey in the form of supreme poetry. This nectar honey grants every boon, even to we who are without spiritual discipline and have no idea about the paths of philosophy. Any other benediction is completely unnecessary. Yes, Khalid. Vishnu might ask, wouldn't you eventually become tired of drinking that? Even the sweetest honey eventually becomes tiresome. So in the end, wouldn't it be better to merge peacefully into pure consciousness? Prthu exclaimed, if somehow someone even once winds up hearing attentively about your auspicious frame from those who really comprehend it, how would that person ever get enough of it, unless they're a dull animal who cannot appreciate the difference between fine food and common garbage? Even the goddess of fortune herself, Shri, wants only this blessing. Oh, so now he mentions Shri, and says Shri is the one who has the blessing that he wants. Vishnu might test Prthu by trying to discourage him. You are a powerful man, emperor of the world. Why would you ask for the same thing that the womanly and emotional Shri desires? What are you talking about? You're a tough guy. You want what Shri has, this beautiful woman over here? What's going on, dude? So Prthu declared, I desire exactly what she wants. I want to become exactly like her, the lotus-handed goddess of fortune. I want the same relationship with you that she has. I want to love. This is so interesting if you know about Chaitanya. That the avatar of Krishna as Chaitanya is very related to this. Because Vishnu himself has curiosity about what is it like to be the experiencer of Vishnu. To directly be the experiencer of Vishnu. Vishnu is Vishnu, and by expansions he experiences himself, but he's curious to know what is it like not to be the guy who's expanding into somebody, but to be the one that's experiencing him. Hence he takes the role. And that's Chaitanya, avatar. And here Prthu is an avatar of Vishnu, but has the same inclination, that he's more interested in what it's like to be Shri, or the experiencer of Vishnu, than it is to be Vishnu, the experienced. And this is also very complex, but yeah, but that's basically it. It's very interesting. It's a very analog to the internal motivation behind the Chaitanya avatar. So Prthu declares, I desire exactly what she wants. I want to become exactly like her, the lotus-handed goddess of fortune. I want the same relationship with you that she has. I want to love you as the supreme male, the storehouse of all attractions and qualifications. This burly king is saying this. Vishnu would test further. I already have my wife. Taking you as a second might cause problems. Yes, that's right. Prthu explains, she and I will not quarrel or compete over our shared husband. We will cooperate to serve your feet as one. Vishnu would ask, but what if she doesn't feel the same way? Prthu explains, O Master of the Universe, I am dedicated to you, so I am not afraid of her. Even if the Mother of the Universe gets mad at me,
for my desire to share in her fortune by assisting her. I know that you will calm her down. I am nothing compared to her, but you especially love the lowly, and you consider even their insignificant efforts to be great accomplishments. Vishnu was speechless, his heart stunned and bound in the ropes of emotion. He could not speak or wipe the tears that flowed from his beautiful eyes. By worshipping you, Prthu concluded, great souls dispel all confused fascination with the glamour of external existence. I know that they desire nothing from this worship except to constantly remember your all-attractive feet. Then, in the great intimacy of love, Prthu chastised Vishnu. When you say, ask me for a benediction, you mislead the whole world. Such words are like ropes that only bind us to misery. For what can we possibly ask for, except the ordinary toilsome things that we are already so intoxicated with? We have divorced our identities from you and given ourselves to your external existence. We have no idea of our true identity, so you should not ask us to choose our own benedictions. You should be like a father who does what he knows is best for his children. Now everybody's going to say, oh, yeah, that's right, but actually he can't. The father can't impose his worldview on the child. You can try. You can give information about your worldview to the child, but the child's the child. They have their own worldview. But if the father was God, they should be able to. No, he doesn't violate the God set up a reality in which there are individuals who are autonomous, because otherwise it's entirely boring. So the one inviolable principle that God establishes in the reality is that the different individual instances of consciousness are autonomous and have their own will. So he cannot just change your programming. You are in charge of that. So the father can say, no, you should go to this college, but if the daughter says, no, I don't want to, blah, 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 then that's her business. And that's the way it works. O king, Vishnu said, you are right. I will give you what you asked for because you have asked for what is truly best. May your contemplations, this also is so cool. Only Vishnu could say that. May your contemplations always be on me, for this will easily carry you beyond the external existence from which liberation is so difficult to attain. Please also convey to your citizens all that I have taught you. And that's the next thing that he's going to do in the next chapter. If your people can apply my instructions to their life, they will get great fortune. Achyuta, the infallible, expressed great affection for the meaningful words of Vena's son, the philosopher king. When he was satisfied that he had reciprocated the king's affections, he once again began to set his mind upon leaving. But first he watched the king worship everyone. From the celestial beings like the gods, sages, ancestrals, divine musicians, technicians, magicians, serpents, and dancers, to the ordinary mortals like humans, birds, and other creatures. He worshipped them all with generous charity, humbly folded hands, gentle words, and a loving heart, for he saw them all as followers and expansions of carefree Vishnu. Indeed, the all-attractive had captivated everyone's heart, not only the philosopher king, but also the priests and all the attendees. Only after he finally left her his own abode, everyone else went home to theirs. The king then bowed his head to Vishnu, who is beyond the limits of manifestation and is the divinity of all divinities. He had departed from sight, but he was still visible within the king himself. Finally, the king returned to his capital. All right. And that's the end of today's segment. What do we have left? We have chapter 21. This is Prthu enlightening the citizens. Then we have chapter 22, which is this Sanat Kumar, who I believe was present at this horse ceremony. And that may have been how they developed their contact. Sanat Kumar comes to answer some of the questions, I think, that the citizens ask, and then Prthu takes advantage to ask questions to Sanat, and then Prthu's final days.
And that was also cool. Wasn't that cool? Anyway, that's that. Then that's the end of the Prthu story. And then remaining after the Prthu story. Oh God, there's so much. This fourth canto is long. After Prthu's story is Shiva's song, which is Prchetas, being taught a song by Shiva that teaches them how to be creative. Then after that, their father. We hear about their father and the story that he heard from Narada, which is the tale of the citizens. Then we go back to the Prchetas and hear about what happened after they sang the song of Shiva. So kind of there's one more story, but yeah, it's divided into 3 parts. Very good. I think I will. There's this interesting thing that Eddie Rosario just asked. Do you think any of the motivation of these people were to also have sex with Hari? You just have to realize that the perception of our perception of the world is backwards, and everything in our experience is therefore backwards. So the approach that we have to sex is backwards, or opposite from the approach that Vishnu has to it. Hence, to think of people's sexual motivation towards Hari, especially for a male, will be exactly wrong, exactly opposite of what they truly feel. If possible, to think of it entirely as a female would think of it, it would be closer. But in this world, it is impossible to think and experience exactly as a female does, because the world is infected by the masculine consciousness, which looks outward. So the subject is very important, but very difficult to grasp. And that's what I'll say about that. Thank you very much.